Consciousness in this particular regard is going to mean of what can you be aware? What is the event horizon of your awareness, the periphery, the peripheral circle around you? What is your capacity to see the relationship between one piece of information, some of which may be stimulating your consciousness from outside, some of it may be some things that already you know, established truths. What is the connection between one truth and another truth, and the ability to infer a third truth? What is your ability of acuity of perception? Do you have hyper-acute perceptual capability? Can you really see, smell, taste, touch, and hear everything relevant that's going on in the atmosphere around you? How aware are you of the appropriateness of the moment? Is that moment invitational to you to act, to speak, to behave? Or is that moment invitational to you to listen, to take in, and to further develop an assessment? Like this, we're beginning to flesh out the idea, what is it you can become aware of? What is the extent of your awareness? Not just periphery, not just that expansion, but also infinite detail within the existing framework. How conscious are you? So let's use a rather extreme example just to prove a point. Someone who has had, for whatever reason, some bad food, followed by lots of alcohol, followed by a night's sleep, waking up into a hangover, and just staggering into their kitchen, may not notice half a dozen things that are going on, any of which could warn them of dangers that have not yet arrived but are cascading into arriving, or opportunities that haven't yet arrived but are cascading into arriving. So missing out on perceptual cues that could add up to a moment of disadvantage, or missing out on perceptible cues, which could lead to fabulous opportunities for great experience. And so our hungover extreme case example notoriously would be just struggling to even be upright, awake, and probably wishing that they were unconscious again. And so then, take somebody who is at an opposite extreme in cosmic consciousness. Cosmic consciousness is the all-inclusive state wherein our mind, our consciousness, is in constant embrace of the backdrop, the underlying unified field of consciousness, which we touch upon briefly, momentarily, every time we practice Vedic meditation, but stabilize that inner state, and we have all-inclusive awareness. All-inclusive awareness doesn't mean you're going to be annoyed by every little flea or a bee knocking against the window, but you might notice those things. Your ability to come to information and knowledge cognitively, to cognize what is the proper thing to be doing at every given moment. Spontaneous right action, meaning in the flow of evolution, in the flow of progressive change. Not missing out on life, not missing out on all of those cues. If we can experience all of the cues, then we can also experience the invitation into living life in great joy. But you miss out on the invitation to live life in great joy, and you end up opting for relatively small-scale, temporary joys, some of those being just, give me the relief of not having to experience any of this. And so what is the world? The world is actually your consciousness state. What state of consciousness are you in? Not what are the circumstances. Circumstances are assessed only by the state of consciousness of the knower. If I assess my circumstances and I think, well, these are dreadful circumstances, and anyone in my situation with these circumstances would be suffering, well, I have to ask the question, well, I don't think so. Really? Anyone? What about Buddha? Would the Buddha, in your exact circumstantial situation, find the circumstances something that were obstacles to an illuminated state or an illuminated set of responses? And again, I'm using extremes to make a point. So then, to what extent are we conscious is going to be answered by to what extent are we able to maximize the intelligent use of our surroundings? To what extent are we able to optimize the intelligent use of the whole environment? Or to what extent are we incapacitated just by the phenomenon of being in the waking state? So greater consciousness means greater in every way. Greater acuity of perceptual capability, greater capacity for arriving at conclusions based on existing knowledge, greater capacity to gather new knowledge and new information to enhance organizing power. To what extent are you conscious? So a state of consciousness is a state with gradations in it. Sometimes we are more conscious, sometimes we are less conscious. We want to be able to optimize the degree to which we're conscious, to expand our consciousness into the full embrace, active, interactive embrace of the needs of the time, the demands of the moment, to interact with those demands satisfactorily with an abundance of creativity, creative intelligence, and energy, so that we can have a sustained joy in life. More consciousness, more joy. Less consciousness, more reactivity. That gives us an idea, at least, of consciousness. And of course, as ever, we could talk about this for hours. But there we have a preview of coming attractions.